We were talking before the podcast and I mentioned alcohol, and Michelle said, do we really have to talk about that? And I said, you'd be surprised. Not a big deal necessarily. However, if you're going to wake up the next morning and go on a 10-mile hike, you might have some issues.
You know, the worst feeling is you start out fine and then a couple miles into it, it hits you. We all think we're super resilient. We're super, invincible. And there might come a time when you recognize that that's not the case.
I feel like those are the kind of people that I'm going to wind up rescuing at some point because I've got all the stuff in my pack that they're going to wind up needing when they get dehydrated and pass out.
I mean, if you're going to indulge the night before, again, that is a dehydrator. So please make sure you rehydrate before you head out. This again is where proper planning can really prevent a huge mishap.
Well, and even for people watching this video or listening to this podcast, I don't expect everyone listening to this to be a hiker necessarily. This is about whether or not you can get out and do any kind of activity, yes, whatever it might be. I think everything can relate to what we're talking about when it comes to physical activities. Welcome back to the Dirty Boot Diva Show. I am Dahlia, your host. I am also the Dirty Boot Diva. And I am back today with Michelle Zellner. And if you missed our first episode, please go back and listen to that. We had a really great time talking about nutrition on the trail, on a thru hike, or any kind of long distance hike. And I had a lovely setup of all my junk food and crazy stuff that I ate while I was on my thru hike this past summer on the Colorado Trail. And Michelle pointed out all the crap that I was eating and gave
But
me...
I did it in a really nice way.
She did do it in a nice way. But no, I mean, it was a great learning experience to get expert advice on, yes, this is not the best thing for you. You don't want to eat this every day of your life. But when you're on a long distance hike, it is beneficial to have certain things that you wouldn't want on a normal everyday basis. That said, I'm still trying to learn how to eat healthier and wiser while I'm on the trail, whether or not it's a long distance hike or on a day hike. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. A lot of people think, I'm just going out for the day. I don't need to eat a lot. I don't need to have, more water than usual. I don't need to have certain safety equipment, which will be a whole nother podcast. But I wanted to talk more about that and the misconception that just because I'm going out for a couple of hours, I don't need a certain amount of food or water, and we're going to go into those details. But first, I want Michelle to reintroduce herself to you and tell you a little bit about her background. And like we said on the last podcast, and I'll say it on every podcast, I'm not a doctor. Michelle is not a doctor. So before you start any kind of activity that's new to you and your body, you need to talk to a doctor and make sure you're able to do that. And on that note, I also want us to talk about your book, and because I've been listening to the audio version, you do talk about certain tests that women should have in general to check their health, their general health, and I think that's something important we should bring up as well. So here is Michelle to tell you a little bit about herself.
Well, thank you, Dahlia. It's lovely to be back with the Dirty Boot Diva. My name is Michelle Zellner. My wellness business is Better Beings. And basically that's my mission, is to help people be better human beings. I have my undergraduate degrees in psychology and nutrition and my master's in kinesiology. And I've really been on my own wellness journey and have been doing something in the wellness space for about 24 years now. And we live in Colorado, so certainly I've done a fair amount of hiking in my day. I've worked with people who also do hiking, day hiking, through hikes as well. So even though I kind of put my hiking boots away a while ago, it's still something that I can certainly help people kind of figure out how to stay healthy while you're engaging in this kind of activity.
Absolutely. And what I had told Michelle well. Obviously, we discussed long distance hiking in the last episode, but I find it hilarious when I go out on a day hike, how many people I see with a little tiny bottle of water, even like tinier than this. And I'm already like 5 miles in on the trail, and I know they're 5 miles in on the trail. I've probably gone through a liter of my water already. Their bottle still is half full. And sometimes they're wearing flip-flops and other crazy stuff, which I always laugh at. I don't know how they make it up the mountain. But to me, that's dangerous. And I feel like those are the kind of people that I'm going to wind up rescuing at some point, because I've got all the stuff in my pack that they're going to wind up needing when they get dehydrated and pass out. So let's talk a little bit about, ideally, when you go out on a day hike, what should you have with you as far as water and food?
Yeah, well, I think it all starts, first of all, understanding how long are you going to be hiking. I think this is something people sort of go out and wing it.
Yeah.
And also they don't maybe take into account the travel time to and from their hiking destination. Those are also hours that your body would like to be fueled. So it's not just how long is the hike, but it's how long am I going to be away from access to food and water. And you really do want to prepare for that. I think perhaps one reason people tend to underhydrate is because they don't want to have to go to the bathroom.
Yes.
Not knowing where they're going to be and what that kind of situation is going to look like. I would say prehydrate for sure. We are just chronically dehydrated anyway. And I think they definitely underestimate how much you lose through respiration. Right? I think sometimes we think it's only through urination that we lose, but we lose a lot through respiration. And so definitely get up in the morning and get yourself prehydrated. You dehydrate overnight, so get a couple bottles of water in you right away, help flush everything out and get yourself set to go. And you know, it's obviously your size and how much you're sweating. I mean, all those things are going to play a role. But I would think it would be better to be over-prepared than under-prepared.
Always.
If nothing else, have extra water waiting for you back at the car so you can rehydrate immediately. But, you know, depending on your size and the length of the hike, you're going to want to be probably taking in 4 to 6 ounces every 15 minutes.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. See, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. Now, the other thing we did talk about in the last episode, and I think it could apply to day hikes as well, electrolytes. Would it be beneficial? I always try to drink a liter with the electrolytes before I even get in the car to drive to the trail. So, you know, I think that would be beneficial no matter what, no matter how long you're hiking or the distance or how much water you're going to be drinking.
Yeah, I certainly don't think it's going to be harmful. Is it going to be beneficial? Maybe, maybe not. It really depends on every individual. Of course, taking in high quality ingredients in your body will provide the resources for your body to function well. Typically, we're not going to be too concerned of electrolyte depletion unless we are sweating profusely for an extended period of time.
Which you might be.
Yeah. Right. So obviously we have to know what is the weather, what are the temperatures going to be like, what's our humidity levels going to be like. I think this is sometimes things people don't really scout out ahead of time. They just think, oh, it's a beautiful day out. Let me go for a hike.
Well, and we're in Colorado, and we know that that doesn't mean anything because the weather can change on a dime. And so you really do have to plan ahead and be prepared for anything. And actually that goes for, you know, the truth is when you hear about people that got lost in the woods and had to be rescued, they're usually on a day hike. It's not like they went out and planned on being out for 2-3 days. So if you have extra water and food, it's just beneficial on that level as well. Now, let me ask you, I've heard people say, I don't drink water when I'm on the trail, but I drink Gatorade or I don't know how I feel about that. I do like having some of those drinks with me, but I still feel like water is important. Is that true?
Water is your number one. Okay. Things like Gatorade, generally they're going to have a lot of sugar, and sugar is actually a dehydrator. Yeah. And so, again, if you're losing electrolytes and you need the sugar for your energy, then possibly a Gatorade. But I would say let's just consume plenty of water and then, you know, a couple of high quality snacks that will give you the fuel that your body needs in order to propel you up that mountain.
Okay. So speaking of food and fuel, what happens if you are on a hike and you feel like you're getting faint, or you feel like you're weak, or your body is just sending you a message, something is not right, what would you say the number one indicator is that something is going wrong? And then what should you have in your pack as far as the type of food and nutrition that could help you get over that hump and at least get you safely back down the mountain?
Well, I think it starts way before you get on the trail. You have to know your own health status, right? So you have to kind of know how things affect you, blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar. Are you hypoglycemic, where you get low, low blood sugar regularly? Do you have low blood pressure, and maybe, a certain situation will cause that to drop dramatically? Sometimes we know this ahead of time. Sometimes we don't discover it until we're in a situation like that. But certainly it could be a low blood sugar issue. So things like feeling dizzy, feeling faint, blurred vision for apparently no reason, shortness of breath, right? I think it's just important in general for us to become very in tune with our bodies, whether we're hiking or not, to start to understand when our bodies are trying to tell us something that it's off. And then, do a little of that deep dive into figuring out what is causing that to happen. And having things in your pack like quick energy, so maybe some hard candies that are going to give you a little extra boost of sugar rapidly, especially if you do have a low blood sugar issue. But this, again, is where proper planning can really prevent a huge mishap like that. So, if you're going to head out on your hike on an empty stomach, you need to have some real food to eat while you're on that hike. So a piece of fruit, maybe some nuts. Those are things that are going to be pretty easy to pack. Granola bars, while they're not super highly nutritious, they can at least serve in a pinch to give you some kind of fuel that would be necessary. I think having a basic understanding of first aid and how the body works is helpful. So you should be able to take a resting heart rate. Is it rapid? Is it really low? Is it hard to find someone's heart rate? I just ran into this with a family member. We weren't on any kind of hike, but just simply out for a walk, but in a very different environment from what we're used to. And this is a person who likes to kind of just tough it out, right? Doesn't want to say there's anything wrong, but I happen to know this person very well. So I'm very clear about when something's not quite right. So maybe they're speaking a little bit incoherently, or they're not responding quickly to your question, right? They're having to really think about the answer. This is a good indication that there is some diminished resources going to the brain. And this was a case where a dramatic onset of a drop in blood pressure caused her to become extremely lightheaded, nauseous, like right away, but she was going to be tough. There's nothing wrong with me. I know better than to allow that to happen. So I think that's just a good safety precaution too for anybody that you're hiking in a group, and you should know each other. You should know the people you're hiking with.
Absolutely.
And certainly being prepared with the water, the electrolytes. Those things aren't going to hurt. They might not solve the problem. It depends what the actual problem is, but quick energy, hydration, get down low. If you are feeling lightheaded, dizzy, don't tough it out. Just get down.
Yeah.
Right?
Listen to your body.
Listen to your body. Yeah.
So we were talking before the podcast and I mentioned alcohol, and Michelle said, do we really have to talk about that? And I said, you'd be surprised. So I think it's maybe a little different if people are going on a camping trip and they're going to be out for a couple days and sitting around the fire at night and having some drinks, not a big deal necessarily. However, if you're going to wake up the next morning and go on a 10-mile hike, you might have some issues. So you really need to be aware of what you can handle and what you can't handle, and then what to do if you are having some sort of reaction to alcohol or something that maybe you should not have drank or eaten at the time. So I wanted to talk about like sort of what not to do. I mean, we've talked about what to do. So what do we not want to do? What do we not want to eat necessarily if we're feeling faint or lightheaded? What do we want to avoid? Well, alcohol.
Well, yeah. Yes. I mean, if you're going to indulge the night before, again, that is a dehydrator. So please make sure you rehydrate before you head out. The worst feeling is you start out fine and then a couple miles into it, it hits you. And that's the thing, is we can leave that base feeling fine, but now we're in a place where we're not fine and we don't know what to do. So I think just trying to avoid those situations in the first place is a great idea. We all think we're super resilient. We're super, invincible. And there might come a time when you recognize that that's not the case. So I would say if you are in that situation, take it slow. So if you're going to start to eat something or sip on something, maybe, small sips, small bites. Even though you might not feel like eating, you might feel nauseous, perhaps you still need some fuel. It's really hard for me to give a blanket answer because every situation is going to be very different.
Right.
But being prepared with some of those quick, easy fixes is probably going to be helpful.
So one of the other things we did discuss in the last episode was your book. And like I said earlier, I have been listening to the audio version of the book. And when it comes to knowing us and knowing what our bodies are saying, you do discuss in your book different testing that women should have done. And we've talked off camera about my thyroid issue, and that's a huge issue for women. And especially as women get older, it's something I think that is very poorly diagnosed, which you say in your book. And I was like cheering you on, sister, because I was lucky. I actually, believe it or not, was diagnosed when I came home from college on a break one time by my pediatrician, because I had gone to the clinic at my college. I had seen a number of doctors there and nobody knew what was going on with me. And it literally took going home, seeing a doctor that knew me from the time I was a child to look at me and say, your eyes are bulging out of your head. I can see your heart pounding out of your chest. Wow. Oh, I literally went to the hospital, and within a few days, I wound up doing the iodine swallow. Like, that's how bad it was as far as hyperthyroidism. So in your book, you do talk about different testing, not just about thyroid, but in general. So why don't you talk a little bit about that? Obviously, I would love for people to get your book, but just give them an idea of what you cover when it comes to that kind of testing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this just goes to just being a healthy human, right? So first of all is knowing your numbers. I like to call them your inside numbers. Blood pressure, blood sugar, cholesterol. These are going to be indicators of your level of risk for disease. So, if you are in a stage of life where you have not had those numbers checked recently, I would say make that a priority. They don't by any means tell you the whole picture, but they can certainly give you an indication of the trajectory of your health or your risk for disease. And if we see any of these numbers out of a healthy range, then we want to start to look to our lifestyle choices that could be contributing to that being out of a healthy range. I also think having a full thyroid panel done is a good idea. One of the challenges most people are going to find is their regular doctor will not do this.
Yes.
And it's really because they're bound by the guidelines of insurance and their medical guidelines. And so they'll do a generic test, which is a thyroid test, which it's interesting they call it a thyroid test because it's not testing your thyroid, right? Yeah. So what you'll get is your TSH tested, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. And that hormone is supposed to stimulate your thyroid to release its hormones. But if your TSH tests in a quote unquote normal range,
then that's it.
It. Right.
And that was the problem that I found.
Right.
I never was within range.
Right.
And if my TSH was normal, my T3 and my T4 were still off.
Right. But you won't get T4 and T3 tested if your TSH is within normal. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So thyroid is extremely complex and there are many layers to it and there are many opportunities for things to go wrong. But if our primary cares are only testing TSH and it's normal, you might never know that your thyroid hormones are actually not functioning correctly. So I would say let's just suck it up and get a little money out of our own pockets because that's what it's going to require.
And see an endocrinologist.
Or see a naturopathic doctor, a doctor who does bioidentical hormone testing because they don't run through the scope of insurance.
Right. Hence,
you pay for it yourself. But they can run any labs you want. And that will provide you some very, very helpful information. And, especially if you are experiencing symptoms and, your thyroid is really your master controller. It's responsible for everything.
Yeah.
And which is why it can be tricky.
Yeah. And if the levels are off, it really can affect every other system in your body. And I've gone through that literally for the last 30 years, even being on Synthroid, being on maintenance drugs, if those drugs aren't working properly and my levels go up and down, so the doses have to change, that has had a tremendous effect on my digestive system, on my heart rate, on everything. So I think because this podcast is going to hopefully appeal to women, they're the ones that really are misdiagnosed with thyroid disease most of all. And they're the ones that usually have thyroid disease.
Right. And even if it's not thyroid disease, right?
Right.
So I'll give you my example. Same thing. In college, I was convinced I had low thyroid, right? And I go and get tested and, oh no, you're normal because my TSH was normal. Well, this is before I really understood anything. I just believe what the doctor told me.
Yeah.
So now flash forward many, many years where I'm learning more about this for myself and for the clients that I work with. And I decided to go get the full thyroid panel done by a bioidentical hormone doctor. And while I technically was in the normal range for TSH, I was on the low end of normal. And my T3 and T4, which are the ones that do all the work, were also on the low end of normal. Well, there is a very different outcome physically, how your body functions, when you are at the low end of normal versus the optimal end of normal. So I don't have any kind of thyroid disease at all. I just have an underperforming thyroid. That's how I describe it. So a very simple prescription of a T4, T3 compound to optimize those levels in my body puts me at the optimal end of functioning. And it's kind of nice to be optimal, I have to say.
No
I
kidding.
enjoy it.
So I agree. I think, and we're concentrating on the thyroid, but obviously there are so many other things that you really should have checked out before you start any physical activity, frankly.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, obviously, hopefully you didn't just decide to go hike one day. Hopefully you've got yourself in shape, right? You started exercising, you're walking, you're doing the elliptical, you're challenging to build your cardio stamina. You're doing some leg strengthening exercises to be able to move your body up and down a hill or a mountain or whatever it might be. If you're going to be hiking with a pack, you should probably practice with a pack.
Yeah.
Right. That's one thing that people do. They're like, oh, I exercise all the time. I'm in good shape. And then they throw a 10-pound pack on them and it doesn't fit right, or it hurts their back, or they're now compensating walking some way because it's uncomfortable. Well, now you're going to start to cause injuries or issues with other body parts. So, practice as you wish to perform. That's just a motto for most athletes. And if you're going to be out hiking with some kind of pounds on your back, you're going to want to know what that feels like and how to be able to adjust. Make sure you still have good posture, even though you just put 10 pounds on your back, which a lot of people don't, really focus on. So lots of core strengthening exercises, upper back strengthening exercises so that you can maintain good posture while you're moving through space.
Well, and that's actually going to be a complete podcast that we're going to talk about as well. We're going to discuss basically how to train if you are planning to do some sort of long distance hike, but also how to prepare if you're just starting out hiking and you don't want to get on the trail and injure yourself on an easy trail just because you were not prepared. So we will go more into that. Along those lines, I was telling Michelle, I've had women comment to me when I've tried to get them out hiking and they've never been, I need to lose 10 pounds before I start hiking, or I need to do this before I start hiking. And I think that a lot of women feel that way about all kinds of activities. I mean, God forbid, if you ask someone to go to the pool with you in the summertime and they think that they're 10 pounds overweight, it's never going to happen. So what do you say to those women who think they need to be in a certain condition before they can even get out and start? And we talked about when I started walking around the lake at Wash Park. I did not go to the first trail and start climbing thousands of feet. It took me a while just to get the stamina to really make it around the park and feel comfortable doing that. So that was my beginning. But what do you say to these women that are like, nope, I can't do it until this?
Yeah.
It's a mental block.
It is a mental block for sure, right? We have this daunting task ahead of us and they think, well, I can't do that, so I do nothing. Right. And yet you have to start somewhere. So my first question is, do you want to go hike? Right. I'm going to encourage people, if they feel like they're missing out because of their condition, whether it's their physical stamina or their weight or whatever it is, then we need to adjust the mindset so that, yes, there's things we want to do, but I have to do something to bust out of this box that I've been in. And it is starting small, right? Let's start where you are. So what can you do? You can go to a park and walk around the park. You can walk around your parking lot. You can run up and down your stairs, right? You can do a lot of things that will help to start get you into condition. And then, when you're ready to go find a trail, let's find a 1 mile trail, do a 1 mile loop. And you are going to want to ease into it. I think, sometimes people do get pressured into doing things that they actually aren't ready for. And because they don't want to let somebody down, or, I used to hike, so I'm sure I can just get right back out there and do it, they might find themselves then in a predicament. So I say to those people, first of all, trust yourself. But also, if this is something that you want to do, then set yourself up for success to be able to do it. Put a plan together, right? What is your training protocol going to look like? Which means I probably have to do some kind of physical activity relatively consistently so that I build up my strength and stamina. And then I'm going to put some schedules on the calendar of, I'm going to invest a little time to identify some hikes that will be relatively easy, beginner level. Find some people who will go with you. Don't venture out and do these things on their own. There are lots of hiking groups, meetup groups
lots
as
of meetup
well.
Groups, and also lots of apps now available that can give you distances of hikes, and they rate them from beginner to advanced. And there is so much more information that we have now that could be beneficial in that way. I'm curious, and I'm going back to your book for one moment. You said at the beginning of this discussion that we just had, do you actually want to go hike? What is your reason? I got to your part in the book about the client that you had that you asked her, what is your why? And it's the roller coaster story. And I want you to just tell that briefly. I mean, this is such an amazing epiphany that I had listening to that of everybody says, why do you want to lose weight? Oh, well, I want to feel healthy and I want to look good. And, well, okay, that's what everybody says. But Michelle has a theory about really finding your why. So tell people that story if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure. So that was the situation with this one client is she'd been on the struggle bus forever about the up and down yo-yoing, losing weight, gaining weight, never being successful long term. So I wanted her to really tell me, well, how is your life going to change? How is losing weight going to impact your life? What is your personally meaningful reason for wanting to lose weight? Because clearly it's hard. If it wasn't hard, you'd already have done it. So she said the standard, I want to be healthy for my family. I want to be a good role model. And, okay, well, haven't you always wanted to be those things? So clearly that's not a good enough reason because so far it hasn't resulted in the outcome you're looking for. And so I asked her to really contemplate this and dig deep. And the next time I saw her, she brought a picture. And it was a picture of her family at an amusement park. And it was a roller coaster. And it was her husband and her son and her daughter and an empty seat. And that was her life. Right? She was the empty seat.
It was the metaphor.
She had missed out on so many things, including this activity with her family because she couldn't fit in the roller coaster seat. And so she didn't want to be the empty seat in her own life anymore, right? That was her personally meaningful reason. And so she had that picture in a variety of places. So when she didn't feel like going for a walk, why is she going to do it anyway? Because she doesn't want to be the empty seat. If she didn't feel like going to the grocery store to get healthy food to meal prep, why is she going to do it anyway? Right? So it's all these small things. Yeah. But I also know that you have to really want to do something.
Absolutely.
I said earlier, I hung up my hiking boots, and I'm okay with that. People think that because you live in a certain place, you have to hike.
Yeah.
No, I actually don't.
Yeah.
That's the beauty of being an adult. I can do whatever I want.
Well, and even for people watching this video or listening to this podcast, I don't expect everyone listening to this to be a hiker necessarily. This is about whether or not you can get out and do any kind of activity, whatever it might be. I think everything can relate to what we're talking about when it comes to physical activity. So I think it's important to know your why. And maybe there is someone watching this who has children that hike or a husband that hikes and they can't go or they haven't wanted to because they haven't felt like they were physically capable of it. This is for you as well, to convince you that it is possible. for you to not be left out of those kind of things.
Absolutely. There's a big difference between I don't want to go because this is not something I enjoy doing versus I don't want to go because I'm afraid that I can't keep up. I'm afraid that it's going to hurt. I'm afraid I'm not going to feel good. Right. There's a big difference in those two things. So if the reason you are not going is because of the fear, but it's something you know that you would enjoy doing with your family, with your friends, seeing the amazing world that we live in, then we need to walk back. Why are we afraid? And how are we going to bust over that fear?
So there you have it. Basically, we've discussed some of the things that you should think about if you are planning to start day hiking, a couple of prep things. Obviously, we're going to delve a little bit more into the physical training that comes into going on some sort of thru hike, a long distance hike, and also just preparing for day hikes if you aren't in the proper physical condition. That's going to be on another episode. And we're also going to discuss for, again, women of a certain age. I know I'm on a ton of meds. When I went on my long distance hike, I had to carry them with me. I had to worry about making sure that I wasn't missing anything. And I did have an experience on the trail where I did. So we're going to have sort of a podcast about that and discussing, again, how to make sure that you are sticking to whatever medical needs you have while you're on the trail, why it's so important to do that. Don't blow it off and say, I can go a couple days without this med or that med. So we're going to talk about that. And also diet, because I recently started doing more plant-based foods, and I am trying to apply that to my hiking. I'm finding it to be a little difficult. So we're going to talk a little bit about just general dietary needs. Again, people who might have gluten issues or things like that, like how can that affect them on the trail as well? So that'll be in another episode. So for now, I'm just going to let Michelle tell you about a really cool trip she has coming up for her Better Beings program. So talk about your trip to Bali that's coming up.
Yes, thank you. So I'm hosting a wellness retreat. It is the Be a Better Being in Bali. So if you are looking or ready to be a better being, I think there's no better way than to do it in a retreat. It's a really great way to be able to completely disconnect from real life, immerse yourself in Bali, in an amazing environment, and really have kind of 24/7 access to me as kind of a wellness professional. So you can pick my brain on anything. It's small group. There are 8 to 10 people in available spots. And so I like to keep it very small. And we cover all aspects of physical, mental, and emotional well-being. I have a gorgeous villa reserved for us to enjoy and some amazing physical activities as well as cultural activities. So it's going to be truly a life-changing experience.
And tell people how they can get more information and sign up for the trip.
Yep. So if you go to my website, betterbeings.net, there's a direct link to take me to Bali. And so that'll send you to that information as well as how to buy my book and my journal and other great information is all on my website.
Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. This is Dahlia, the Dirty Boot Diva, signing off for this episode, and we'll see you the next time. Just make sure to get out and get dirty. Make sure to subscribe to the Dirty Boot Diva YouTube channel so you don't miss a video. And be sure to check out the Dirty Boot Diva Show podcast on Podbean or your favorite podcast app. For links related to this video, see the description below or visit dirtybootdiva.com. Thanks so much for watching. Now get out and get dirty.